Hi, everyone. I know so many videos in such a short period of time, but I'm here to give you an update of this week. It's the last week for the role playing club that we have over at the after school program here in my local rural school. And so the middle school kids won't be playing next week because it's just before Christmas. And the principal and I decided that it would just be a little bit too much for the kids to kind of have all that. And Thursday they'll be leaving to go home. So this is their kind of cliffhanger of cliffhangers. And so I'm going to give you an update on two different games. Spoilers. I don't need to say any more. If you don't want any spoilers for Summer in December or The Dance of Dreams or The Witch Cat Inn, just stop watching. So there you go. You've been warned. So I think what I'm going to start with is, I think what I'm going to start with is The Witch Cat Inn. Because it's fresh in my mind. I did it yesterday, and so I've got it in my head, and both games were absolutely fantastic, and I left you kind of knowing what was going on, but kind of not going what was going on. So I'm just going to minimize my screen here, kind of let you know what is going on, and just trust that what I'm recording is happening. So with the Witch Cat Inn, there was a young person that wasn't part. So remember, we have, and watch the previous videos if you want to catch up on this stuff. We have a very spoiled, brattish kind of character who is very dissimilar to the real life person playing it. She's a countess, and her name is Alice, the countess, and so she's just known by everybody as the countess. She has a butler, and the butler just goes by the butler and is very rarely referred to by anybody. And then we have a madam. The madam is a medium. She has a crystal ball, which she doesn't have on her at the moment. And she is a very practical, thinking type of character. And so we'll discuss kind of very briefly just a synopsis of where we are at the moment. So, and then the professor hasn't been playing for a couple of for a couple of weeks. So he was there yesterday, and so we were able to catch him up. We needed to establish where he was, and we remembered that he had gone to his room. So he was in his room, and I have all of their rooms kind of marked out. I didn't have the Witch Cat in PDF, which I will be referring to today. The Witch Cat Inn. You can search on Drive Through Review. If I forget to put it in the YouTube notes, you can get it on Drive Through. It is very, very good. It's pixelated because I've kind of blown it up a lot, but the kids loved it. Like, they were like, wow, did you make this? I said, no, I got this online. And they were amazed. So I'm super happy to kind of show this off. I don't have the name of the individual who created this off the top of my head, but I've got it. Now, the situation that arose was that they had broken into Nora's room. The Countess forced the butler, who had promised Sophia. Sorry, you know how I am with names. Sophia had promised to Sophia that, look, no, I won't let anybody in your room. Countess bullied. He smashed open the door. They got in, but they were able to close it because the back of the door was broken off, not the handles. So it could potentially look as if nobody had broken in. So anyway, went into the room. They had an event. Countess was possessed. Countess attacked Butler with her pointy high heel shoes. I gotta rethink that because cobblestones. I mean, they're so. I'm just thinking she's an idiot. And the character is just so high on herself that she's wearing high heel shoes to a rural setting. Because the Witch Cat Inn is in a very rural setting, and so it's very impractical. But anyway, she smashed it through her butler's cheek. He's drooling now, and it's just sad. It's just sad. So they were in their room, and all of a sudden they heard Sammy coming up the stairs, who had finally heard the ruckus upstairs over the kitchen, or over kind of the area. Now, the kitchen is a little bit lower, but he heard noise. So he stomps upstairs, and he confronts the countess, who has left the room, who has left Nora's room, and now is in the middle of the hall, kind of going toward her room, and he confronts her. What have you done? What have you done? And so that's where we left off. The madam shoved the bandaged butler in an armoire, and she had laid down on the ground to kind of hide. There's no light. All the candles that they had, the individual candles that they took off of the sconces, are out. That's the situation. So what happened was we started with, okay, Butler, you're in your room. You start hearing the screaming and yelling of Sammy, which you've heard for a long time because this is what he does. He's an abusive person, very, very bad guy. And so you're hearing him scream now upstairs, and the character who's playing the Countess, when I asked her, what are you doing? She was saying, I'm screaming help, I'm screaming help, I'm screaming help. So she's not, and she raised up her dagger shoe, her high heels, probably 3-inch, I guess, and was like threatening, so that she did a manipulation roll that it was tied. And so I figured that he was still going to move forward, but be cautious. She was kind of standing underneath where the candle, kind of like the candelabra was, or I guess it's not a candelabra. It's, I don't know, a ceiling candle. I can't think of the friggin' name at the moment. You know how my brain works. So anyway, you're all screaming and yelling. So anyway, there's this kind of, she's right there. Sammy's coming towards her. They have just enough light with these 6 candles up in the air. And then there's a couple of candles way down the hall, more toward where you go up to the attic. So, here we are in the Witch Cat Inn with the Dance of Dreams, about to figure out what is going on. And so, we draw initiative cards. So we do the initiative cards, and essentially kind of what happens is Sammy and the Contessa square off from a good distance. They're still about 5 meters away from each other. About 5 meters away from each other, and maybe 3. But essentially, they're like, she's yelling for help, and he's yelling, "It's you know, What have you done? What have you done? After she intimidates him, his speech and yelling changes to, "You're a witch. You've brought back the ghost. You're you're evil. It's your fault." And he just keeps on screaming that it's her fault. So this is all happening, and of course the poor character who's playing the countess is freaking out. And then the people in the room go in Nora's room. So the madam goes first, and she decides to get up and get the butler out of the armoire, and he was willing to go out, so there wasn't any need for manipulation roll or anything. He came out, and then she leads him out of the room quietly while the screaming is going on, in order to make it to his room. Now, in his room, he has a crowbar and he's got a revolver that's in his room. And we spent a little bit of time kind of, where would you put your revolver? Do you have your revolver on you? We rolled 50-50, and he had left it in his room. So if I think about it, and if I could go back, I'd probably have said that he had it inside his butler's uniform, kind of like one of those detective straps or something like that. They said a pocket, but really, I consider a revolver larger than a pistol. So it's in his room. She's leading him out, and her intention is to go past the countess and to that first room, which is across from where Nora's room is. So it's the first room across. That's where he has his room. The butler has his room. And across from the butler's room is where the countess has her room. And remember, I hadn't seen the way it was set up, so I didn't know if there were double beds or single beds or all that stuff. I might have reversed it if I had known, but it is what it is. I'm going to show you a map in a second. So Sammy ends up with the door opening right in front of him as he's screaming at the countess. And there is the professor. Now, I said to the professor, now he's got a fair amount of stuff. I for some reason I decided not to put my stuff out here to kind of look. But he's got either, I think he's got a revolver or a shotgun. He grabs a rope. And I said, "What's your intention with the rope?" He says, "I'm going to try to tie him up." So anyway, they grapple. It's a tie. More stuff happens as they move along. And then they hear, because I rolled, and Lisa, the friend of Sammy, and the father come upstairs. You're going to hear my dog barking. Sorry about that. So they start to come upstairs to find out, why is Sammy screaming upstairs? Like, this isn't normal. But they start coming upstairs. Is everything okay? Because they're hearing help, and then this. And in my mind, they're thinking, okay, this is the countess. This, like, we can't allow Sammy to start beating on a countess, okay? So I've imagined that these guests have come upstairs. Now, spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. If you know, Lisa has a pistol inside her purse, okay? So keep that in your mind. So now we're going to switch to this scene. So that's how it looks after some stuff has happened. So I don't know how to do the cursor over the PDF. So you're just going to have to use your brains. So the Z is the countess, and the O is the professor. Sammy is clearly marked in purple. So characters are red, NPCs are green. So Sophia hasn't come up. Ingley hasn't come up. Sven hasn't come up. They're all downstairs, probably licking their wounds. But these guys are all upstairs. And Olaf is downstairs still. He hasn't come up. He's trying to figure out what the hell do I do with these characters, because he's got an agenda, and he's kind of stated to them what he wants, that all Vaesen need to be eliminated, but that they're not sure what his master plan is or what's going on, and the Countess has walked away from him and has completely dissed him, and he understands that she's the leader of this group. She's the one that he has to convince. So I figured that he'd stay downstairs. So this is the situation that has happened. Now, this is just after the fact. So just imagine the father, the friend, and Lisa, marked with an L, are about 2 meters back, kind of level to where the stairs are at the top of the stairs. They've come around and they're level there. So, and you'll see, I just have to move my OBS over a little. Okay, so you'll see that there's an eye. Okay, so that is that's the butler, and the D, and the white line is just the door being opened. So the D is the madam, who's leading the butler into his room, possibly to get the gun, possibly safety. As GM, I don't really know. So the tension is building as they're trying to figure out, what is Sammy going to do? Now, eventually, I think the next round, the butler does tie him up. But Sammy gets out of it, but not out of the grapple. He's able to get the ropes down, but he's not able to break from the grapple. And the grapple is from behind. He's restraining him from behind. He's still not, well, he's threatening, but he's not really threatening as much as he's just naming her out as being a witch. So the Countess is a witch. The Countess is doing all that stuff. So it's a weird kind of situation that we're looking at. So now I ask the characters, the character who is the Countess, to tell me, or to do a roll for, I keep on messing up vigilance and observation, so it's a vigilance roll. So she rolls to see something. And I have the one who's playing the madam, who's just opened the door, and she's opened the door, she's turning to get the butler inside the room. So she turns briefly this way to see down the hallway. So I ask her to look. And they both see that the father, the friend, Lisa, and Sammy have all gone limp with their hands and are now staring into space. And so a round goes by, and they're all kind of, like, everybody is just shocked and stuck. Sammy starts screaming, "It's my fault. It's my fault. I must atone. I must atone for my sins." So he's screaming this, and then all the characters who are playing are starting to freak out because they don't know what the heck is going on. And then I think everybody begins to stare in that direction, other than O in this picture, because he doesn't see it because it's behind him where the L is. In blood is written, Piri is What does it say? Sorry, I just I need to kind of look this up. But Piri is something. Uh, it's not Piri is guilty. Oh, it's here, isn't it? Piri's the traitor. Okay, so in blood, it's Piri's the traitor, and he's like screaming that he's guilty and that he deserves to die. And so we're bringing this page 202 of the core book to life with that, because I figured I can't do it downstairs because they've already all gone upstairs. They're sneaking in Nora's room. There ain't going to be no play now. And so then all of a sudden, Lisa raises her gun and shoots. So she hits the Contessa once, but nothing major happens. And she misses the other times. Uh, so in this image that you have in front of you, okay, you will see that they are all kind of in their positions as they're at the moment. So just a little bit of kind of backstory is that the butler, who has a revenant's finger, knows what a revenant is. And so he knew that the feeling that he had was that of a revenant. So he's aware. Now, none of the other characters know this. I brought him out of the room and I told him. And so then uh, he also um, he realized something else, and I'm trying to remember what he realized, but I brought him out twice. He realized that, and I think it was that he remembered that Piri was the was the was the grandfather. So then all of these kind of NPCs, other than Sammy, are crying out. Um, are crying out. Katja Albert Hilma Piri. Katja Albert Hilma Piri. And I keep on repeating this kind of increasing volume. And this was before she shot, but she's still shooting as you know. And so there's this tension building up for the kids, because all of a sudden two of them kind of realize, oh my gosh, these are the guys that Linnea spoke about with the 100 uh dying up when they were fighting the giant many moons ago. And so they're starting to click, and they're starting to realize a lot of stuff. Now, the madam realized from the feeling that it was a spirit in the room. This was the last session. So they realized a lot of stuff. Now, you may think that, well, that's it. There wasn't a lot going on. But in actuality, that summation, uh, that was about an hour and a half. So I'm quite proud of them. I think that they did really, really well. There was a lot of tension, and that's the way they ended, is standing there with the blood dripping down, saying Piri is a traitor. Now, I forgot to mention this, Sammy had grabbed the rope from the ground. He had, the butler had dropped his hands down, and Sammy had grabbed the rope, because, of course, he's planning on hanging himself. But the butler, again, has restrained him, but he's trying to get loose. So now these guys, the NPCs, are all going to try to attack because they're in this trance. So that's the Witch Cat Inn, and that's where we are with them. I'm really happy. I think that it went really, really well. I can't tell you how much fun I have with the kids because, as I've said before, they have. I've spoken about this in another video, but it's like the Songs of Experience and Innocence by William Blake, or the poems. That you have this kind of you're innocent until you are until you have experience, and then you can't go back. So for us as old gamers, um, you know, it's hard for us to recapture that feeling that we first had with something new and exciting that really just opens up our eyes to a new reality. And maybe that's why we're so cynical about new Star Wars or new Tolkien or new whatever, is because I have views on its crappiness. But maybe it's because of we're trying to recreate a nostalgia that goes back to that innocence, which we can never recapture. But these kids have that innocence of opening up their eyes and just loving the game. And again, I can't emphasize enough how easy it is for the Mutant Year Zero or Year Zero engine games to click in with the kids. uh, it's just something that's seamless. They understand that when they level up, they're going to get another dice. They know that their chances are going to increase. It's just very, very simple. I used to scoff at the D6 games, and I remember criticizing my daughter who played Warhammer, and said to her, "It's just D6s. Who cares?" But I get it now. There is a simplicity to just rolling dice and having that six come up, and it's great. So that is that. So I'm going to now move to back to this scene, and I think I can get rid of that. Yeah. So now we're at Summer in December. So this was the game I played on Tuesday. So hopefully it won't be as fuzzy in my mind. But there's a lot going on in this story. There's a lot of movement happening, an awful lot of movement. Basically, where I left them off, and the person who shot the gray man wasn't there for the game. He was sick that day, and so I had him fall. He shot, he accidentally fell, he knocked his head, he was knocked out, and his hunter dog went directly to him to lick his wounds and to stay by his master. So instead of Snuggles going to the gray man or anything like that, the dog went directly to the hunter character and is now with the hunter character, who was basically for the rest of that session out of it. Where we left off was the gray man had been shot, critically wounded, guts, wounds in his stomach, and so they're all converging. You've got a group of three. You have the captain. You have Jack Grace, the football star, and I don't mean American football, I mean real football. So Jack Grace, the captain, so those are the characters who are there, moving toward the gray man, and Carl. So Carl, the hunter, is there in that kind of clump in the forest, moving out of the forest toward the gray man. The doctor has moved along, and the kitten is following along. And before actually leaving the Oberg, before leaving the inn, because I forgot about this, spoilers, I needed to make sure that he had the page that was intentionally open on his desk um, in his kind of doctor's office or room where he does the examination. So I had the cat pierce it, rip it out, and give it to the doctor. And so the doctor has read it. And just going back to the other game with the Dance of Dreams, that person who's playing the madam has got the notebook. She hasn't in real time, like in her time as a character. She hasn't. The Contessa hasn't had or the madam hasn't had a chance to read the journal from Nora, but she's got it in her possession as a character and as a person. And as a person, she's read through it. So when it comes up in the new year, she'll be able to access that information that she's gleaned from that. So the doctor has this note, again, hasn't gleaned anything from it, or may have, but he's got it on him. And I think that's about it. Am I missing a character? 1, 2, 3. Oh, that's because he just isn't circled in white. All right, so see, my nose is starting to act up. So we've gone 30 minutes, so let's keep on going and let's work through this. So here you go, and this is not in the core book. This is a wonderful PDF that you can purchase on Drive Through RPG. It's called Summer in December. It is by Matthew, one of the co-hosts. Dave is the other. I think Matthew is Dr. Matthew Tyler Jones, and Dave. Anyway, they make up the Effect podcast, EFFEKT podcast, and they're absolutely great supporters of the Mutant Year Zero engine or Year Zero engine, and are developing a wonderful new game. And if you want to know more about it, well, go to their Patreon and join their Patreon. It's very exciting to see what they have in the works, and I wish them well. I think that it's absolutely awesome. So this is our scene. So I've described to you the K should be circled. So those two white circles at the top in between the mill and the Oberg house in the forest are Jack Grace, the hero, kind of soccer star in the newspapers and all sorts of stuff. And he's becoming a household name in the Uppsala area. And then you've got Carl. I don't know why Carl is marked down in white. He shouldn't be, because he's not a main character. So, and then you've got the K, which is, maybe that is the captain is behind Carl. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So, the gray man is in blue, where the pink arrow and the purple arrow are leading. You will see a pink X with a green little center just around the fence. That yellow fence is the fence that I imagine is around the Oberg house. There is a gate at that back section where the X is. You'll also see the cross and the orange. That is just the cemetery. And you will see the brown of the dog that has crossed over. And the X was where the last position was. So, as I said, the H is for the hunter. The dog is now with the hunter. The doctor is running toward the gray man after seeing the gray man shot. The Jack Grace is running to the gray man. Carl is walking over, telling everybody to look for the well, to look for the children now, because the children should be changed. They should be there. And so he's following along with his belief that the gray man has changed them, so they must have changed back. Keep on looking for the kids. I'm going to check on my hunter friend or compatriot. So he's moving over and he just walks over nonchalantly. And then he bends down and he's starting to care for the hunter. So everybody else has moved now from their locations up to the gray man. The captain is just walking over. Margarita is screaming and yelling. She drops her bag where the X is, and she moves over to the gray man, screaming, Thomas, Thomas, what have you done? What have you done? And so she's gone right there. Jack Grace and the doctor are there at the same time that she's there. So they all converge, and the first order of business is the doctor needs to do some initial trauma help. He's got 8 dice, and he's already he's already angry with that condition, and so it doesn't matter whatever his conditions are, because he has the feat of emergency, or feat, whatever it's called, talent of emergency medicine. So he's going to ignore any condition. So he's got 8 dice to roll, but his advantage was he was focusing in on his medicine, and so he could use it. So he decided not to use his advantage, but to use his 8 dice. So he rolls the 8 dice, he fails. Poor young fellow. He was so disappointed. But that everybody, everybody was at this heightened state of like, well, what do we do? What do we do? We've got now they're realizing that it is Thomas. They're right next to him, and it is a man. And she keeps on screaming, what have you done? And then starts to change the tune to, you've got to heal him before the daylight. And so they don't, it hasn't dawned on them yet, right? So the doctor's there, he's tried his best, he rolls again for the advantage, and he takes another condition. So he rolls, and he gets 1 success. Now I figure that it's difficult, and I'll well, at least a 2. And I'll tell you why. Because in keeping with the Queen of the Spring, as soon as he shot, the clouds start coming over and it starts to rain. And then it turns to torrential rain really quickly. And then it turns to such bad rain that everybody around GM there, the blue, everybody around there can't see the hunter, who's not that far behind. But they can't see. All they can see is the mill, and they can't see any of the village. Now, I don't know if this was Matthew's point, but I just thought that it was a nice kind of opportunity of using that mysterious ability of the Queen of Spring to be able to cast down a torrential storm that is so effective that it actually cancels out being able to see. It's also it's also quite dark. And so it made sense to kind of say, well, you need 2 successes to pass this. So he gets 1 success. So I figured that the gray man, Thomas, we rolled, and he has 5 hours before he dies. So I reduced it to 2, or I reduced it to 3 hours before he died. And I said, you just have barely put enough pressure, but you know that he's going to need a blood transfusion. So the they're pretty smart kids. They were like, well, what blood type is he? And so anyway, there was this big discussion. Now, at this time, the captain is trying to calm down Margarita. So that's his job. That's what he's doing. He's rolling. He's able to calm her down enough, but she keeps on talking about a time limit. The captain doesn't really get it, but he's doing what he can. Jack Grace decides that he's going to help the captain. Does this on his own, so very innovative role playing, that he's going to take his jacket off. Oh, and the captain took his jacket off, gave it to Margarita, and covers the body of Thomas so that the doctor can work on him. So the doctor is working on him, gets that one roll, and so they can see the mill, and so they decide to set up a kind of stretcher type thing with their jackets, which I thought was, again, very, very brilliant. So the doctor has just barely stabilized him, but the time has gone down, which I think was warranted for one dice. And so they're moving up. The Carl and the Hunter character, who's not in play, are out of it. They can't see anybody. And the doctor now is moving along with the captain, Margarita, and Jack Grace. So the main characters have moved with Thomas and Margarita to the mill. So they're at the mill. Now, if you've ever been to a mill, you know that they have saws and stuff. Remember, it is dilapidated. It hasn't been used for a while. So I rolled to see if there was a sheet. There was a sheet there. I gave it a 50-50 chance that someone would have covered up some of the machinery. And remember, it would be dusty, but the opposite side would be relatively clean. The doctor realizes that he needs as much of a sterile environment as possible. We rolled to see if anybody still had booze on them. I'm not overly keen on talking about booze with the kids, but I'm not by any means an idiot. And so, I rolled and I said, okay, Jack Grace, you've got a flask of vodka on you because it's, it's aquavit. Because that's what you have in the area. I said, because he's British. That's the character, is British. And so I said, you don't have any beer, and you don't have any scotch, and you don't have anything like that you'd normally drink back in England, but you've got this aquavit. And it's a clear alcohol, and so the doctor will be able to sterilize the wound and stuff like that. And the doctor always carries around his medical bag, and I figured that because he's been trained in emergency medicine, we already established that he was a surgeon and a coroner, and we already established that he's been preparing his advantage as kind of an emergency doctor, and so therefore his bag would include things for surgery, rudimentary things, but things for surgery. So we go through this blood type discussion. And so I say to them, okay, and I'm trying to think, how can, I don't want to do anything that's going to kill Thomas if I can avoid it, but I'm not going to fake it either. So I said to them, okay, think of Call of Duty or stuff like that. Think of current war and what people would have on them. And they're thinking guns and stuff. And I said, no, uniform, no. Think, what do modern day soldiers have? Well, I guess kids today don't really think about dog tags. And they don't think about those type of identifications. Now, I don't know when ID came into existence, but I imagine that by the 1870s, there would have been some type of card indication that would identify the body. Now, again, I didn't do my research, but I just thought, okay, somehow or other in the Swedish army, they have name, rank, serial number, I guess, and blood type. again, I don't know when the again where when blood types were developed. Um, and I wasn't going to look it up, and I didn't look it up for this discussion. So essentially, and I guess I can get out of this picture now. So essentially, we go back. We're at the mill, and there and so tables are taller, so that they can work on the tables for with the saws and stuff. So it's perfect. There's no saws there, but it's perfect to be able to put the back side, the clean side of a tarp over some type of surgical table that would suffice. Um, we rolled dice, and it just so happened that the captain and Thomas had the same blood type, and basically they roll. What I had is I had them roll. Everybody rolled two dice, and if you got one of the same number, then you had the same blood type, and the captain had the same blood type. Now, the person who's playing the captain is an epileptic, and is controlled, but when I was describing the blood and the guts, and I was getting a little too into it, he was starting to look a bit peakish and said, I think this might affect my epilepsy. He sat down. Anyway, but I said, you're higher up. He's put you, he's asked you to get up on a higher up table. He's, poked you with a needle, and now you're doing a direct transfusion into Carl. Whether or not that works in real life, I'm just thinking gravity and thinking about the days when I made beer. So gravity's working, and so the doctor does the surgery. So the doctor does the surgery, and this is kind of the big finale of this is toward the end of the game. He rolls his 10 dice. He's using his two extra dice. Remember, he doesn't suffer from conditions because of his talent, and so he rolls the 10 dice, and he gets four successes. So I said, you stitch him up. You do it in record time. She Margarita keeps on screaming in the background that the sun's coming up, the sun's coming up, the sun. So there's this sense of desperation that there's a time limit. And I said, you've done it in record time. You've been able to sew him up, and you have confidence that as long as there's no sepsis or that nothing happens inside, that you've healed him, and you've got everything, all stitched up well, and the sun is just now coming up. And then I described the transformation. And so I'm going like this, and I'm talking about first starting and the nose coming out and the blackness and the hooves, and I really elongate this out. And one of the young people have to take the late bus. There's only one person out of the eight to take a late bus, and it's the doctor character. And so about 10 to 4, I knew that I had to wrap it up, and so I left it with a fawn standing up on the table and with stitches intact on the bottom of its body and about to take off. And that was where I left it. So, of course, I told them all to have a wonderful Christmas, as I did with the Thursday group. They just can't wait to play again. I'm really happy. I think that this is going really well. I hope that you appreciate the fact that I'm sharing this. It's not getting a lot of views, and I don't expect it to get a lot of views. It's just for those who are interested in how to play with kids. I think that this applies for anybody, for adults too. I think adults generally would overthink many elements and may have said to me, well, you can't do that because the blood won't flow in the same way, and no, they didn't have this equipment in those days, and the kind of discussions that happen between peers at a table to say, well, that's not realistic, or that's not, you can't make that happen. I try to keep it as realistic as possible, but I really wasn't as prepared for that uh, doctor situation. I certainly wasn't thinking about the fact that, you know, there would be a thought about a blood transfusion. So good on the kids. I was really proud of the character who plays Jack Grace covering up the body from the rain. Now it wasn't as heavy where they were, but it certainly was a downpour. And I was proud of myself as a GM, thinking that okay, the Queen of the Spring is acting now because the conditions have been met for this to work. So, again, I think both Summer and December um, and the core book Dance of Dreams are excellent introductory scenarios. Certainly can be played with kids without any concern. Um, my my question for you, if you at all care, and if you are willing to make a comment, and if you've watched this far, is if you've bought any online games or anything for Vaesen. Now, I do have a Wicked Secret, and I do have the Myths of Britain and Ireland, and yeah. So I have this one, and I also have another one coming in, and I don't know. Well, maybe I have it. Maybe it's just on the table. I don't know. Anyway, I have everything that's been published. So if you think of both of these groups, what would be a good next step for them, I would really genuinely appreciate any advice that a Mutant Year Zero person can give me on what should be the next step. I really want the Thursday group, the ones that are doing the core book Dance of Dreams, to go back to Castle Gillenkrauts and to do the upgrades. Just in order to catch up in time with these guys that I've just described who are in the summer, okay, or approaching summer. So I would like that latter group that I just spoke about, the ones who are playing summer in December, to go to a next adventure before going to Castle Gillenkrauts. So I'd like to see them going to the castle maybe sometime around August or something like that. But as soon as they finish, I would like to give them another step. Now, they still haven't solved the issue with the doctor. They still haven't solved the queen of the spring. So there's a couple of issues that are still unresolved. And so we'll see what happens. Thanks a lot for watching. It's been just before an hour, which I think is pretty good for me to sum all those things. Have a great weekend. I probably won't put anything up before Christmas unless something really catches my eye. I've ordered a whole bunch of stuff, so I'll be getting Twilight 2000. I may talk about it. I may not. I don't know. I may see you before Christmas. I may not. But happy holidays for everybody who's watching, and hope that you get refreshment if I don't speak to you before then. But I've got Twilight 2000 coming in, and it really is a stretch for me. It brings me back to kind of Avalon Hill days and Panzer Leader and Panzer Blitz and squad leader and all that stuff. So I'm unsure. I have a lot of conflicting ideas because of the war in Ukraine and because of the rawness of it, but I want to look at the system. I also got Alien. I just got Alien, the main box, and I have the core book coming in. And did I get anything else? Well, yes, I did. Oh, yeah, I got Blade Runner. So Blade Runner is here as well. So Blade Runner is back there, which I need to just look at again. At the moment, I'm going through the Coriolis rules with a fine-tooth comb. So I'm actually reading every page and marking up every page. I tend to get my PDFs and then just, use, an online, the highlighter, right? All right. So take care. Bye. See ya.